About the next 250 episodes of Trek were the hardest to rank on this list. You can put most of them in any order and have a reasonably satisfying episode of TV, no matter which one you choose. Welcome to Best of Trek, Worst of Trek. I'm your host, Dustin Wing. Haunting us in our dreams is 496. Data's unconscious. Or Phantasms. Data has weird dreams and nightmares through the use of his dream program. He also spends a chunk of the runtime watching Spock sleep. Geordi's ongoing arc of not getting the woman he actually wants leads to another cute woman that wants him, and he's not interested in. Some of the metaphysical and psychological aspects of this episode work, but as a whole, it's one of those Season 7 TNG head-scratchers, where it's a fun watch, but you're not quite sure what you watched when it's over. One scene I definitely can't forgive is where Picard goes to engineering to try and help with the repair process, and ends up showing a total lack of basic understanding of reality when he offers to move around isolinear ships. If Kayshawn were to sum this one up, Deanna Troi, when she became a cake. With mint frosting. Having hilarious fun at 495, The Stupid Syndrome. Or The Naked Time. It's hard to imagine that TNG did an episode based on this script, which I ranked 7th from the bottom of the list. Meanwhile, the silly TOS episode it's based off is somehow much more satisfying to watch. The Enterprise finds a scientific party frozen to death. Ensign Dumb as a Rock puts his exposed hand under his beekeeping suit and infects himself with the virus that ultimately killed everyone here. He goes back to the ship, and we start this crazy Trek trope so cliche and fun, Lower Decks had to have a poke at it. Lieutenant Colored Sugar Cubes plays the role of Wesley Crusher, takes over the ship, and almost crashes the Enterprise. Uncle George and his rapier are just gold in this one, even if it's completely and totally over the top. Spock invents the intermix formula for time warp that's seen again in Tomorrow is Yesterday, and Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Majel's first episode as Nurse Chapel is a nice touch, even if this is the worst wig she will wear in her next 3 decades of appearances in Trek. Introducing Wallace Shawn at 494, Rightful Heir, or The Nagus. Miles must suffer being a substitute teacher while the Ferengi Grand Nagus convenes a Mafia-style meeting of Ferengi bigwigs for the big reveal that he's stepping down and naming a successor. His son, who we'll never hear mentioned again, is deemed unworthy, and he sets Quark up by making him Nagus. He then fakes his own death and waits to see who's going to kill Quark. It's a fun introduction to Ferengi culture as more than just worthless bad guys of the week. Searching for the Vault at 493, Yankee Traders Part 2, or Acquisition. In a fun but ultimately worthless episode that gives Jeffrey Combs and Ethan Phillips a reason to adorn Ferengi makeup one more time, Enterprise is immobilized by a group of Ferengi that try to steal stuff, and the females. Turns out Trip was in decon when everyone else got knocked out and does Die Hard on a starship. In his undies. Might be the least serious musical score in Trek history, but a totally satisfying watch.
Doing a 1930s radio play at 492, Photonic First Contact, or Bride of Chaotica. When photonic life forms from the nth dimension mistake Paris's black and white holoprogram as real life, they get hosed by the dangerous, dastardly, and diabolical Chaotica. The Voyager crew help foil the evil genius's plot, but only after Janeway gets her coffee. Bob Picardo at his best as the president of Earth, and don't miss Kate Mulgrew as Arachnia, queen of the spider people. Join us on the next episode of Voyager and see if our heroes make the leap home.
The universe tries really hard to tell Miles not to marry Keiko at 491. Bad day. Or Data's day. There's a bunch of plots going on, and some of them are okay. Data writes a letter to the scientist that once wanted to dismantle him, while getting caught in the middle of the O'Briens' near breakup on their wedding day. Meanwhile, the ship is carrying a seemingly Vulcan ambassador to meet with Romulans, only to find out she's a spy they're returning. Not the last time you'll get burned by a Romulan posing as a Vulcan in Starfleet. And to further round out the runtime, Data gets dancing lessons. The episode feels quite mismatched, but it also mostly works. On a fast track to Chief Engineer is number 490, Trust, or Parallax. In one of the better second episodes in a show's run, B'Elanna starts failing upwards in the world by becoming Chief Engineer after breaking Carrie's nose. Voyager encounters a time-delayed version of itself and plays around with temporal mechanics, but we get a tiny bit of character development for everyone. Kes humanizes the Doctor, though we had to pad the runtime with really bad camera tricks of Bob Picardo, as his hollow emitters cause him to shrink. Enjoying bread at 489, Spirit Folk, or The Crossing. Energy beings try to inhabit the crew, but only after immobilizing them, then letting them go, then immobilizing them again. This episode was nominated for an Emmy for Best Visual Effects in a Series. Honestly, the effects are pretty mediocre, as is most of Enterprise's CG. The CG in Voyager and DS9 really worked, but somehow in the early 2000s, switching over to the Plan 9 operating system only yielded good starship shots and little else. It's a decent classic sci-fi trope, explored mediocrely though. Dealing with mental issues at 488, Integration. Or Forget-Me-Not. While Season 3 is overall my favorite season of Discovery so far, this one takes too much suspension of disbelief to get through some parts, and like the Enterprise episode we just talked about, the CG feels weak and forced. Discovery brings Adira to Trill and seeks help integrating her symbiont so she can access its memories better. They're at first refused, but later one of the guardians of the symbiont pools tries to help by throwing salts in the water that somehow allow Adira to turn into a White Walker and breathe underwater. And later Burnham, who goes into this pH-balanced pool with her boots on, and ends up inside Adira's consciousness, or something. The whole thing is really metaphysical and weird. I do like the character of Adira a lot, and we get a ton of flashes of her symbiont Tall's backstory. Meanwhile, the rest of the Disco crew get the night off after what seems like their precursor to Zora's intelligence, suggesting to Saru to put the ship on autopilot and give the entire crew the night off. He hosts this weird dinner party for the bridge officers, which is on one hand a nice time, but devolves into this weird thing where Detmer starts displacing her anger onto Stamets for little to no reason, in a poem about his blood. This episode has some severe ups and downs, which lands it here on the list. I think it's better than the 6.2 it's ranked on IMDb, though. Pulling a con at 487, Federation franchises. Or Live Fast and Prosper. Have you ever wanted to be part of the Federation? For the low, low price of 3 bars of gold press latinum, you too can own a franchise in the United Federation of Planets. If that's something that works for you, perhaps I can interest you in some discounted mining futures? With a group of aliens impersonating Janeway, Tuvok, and Chakotay selling fraudulent Federation memberships, Voyager is forced to defend the integrity of their organization. I really like the fake Tuvok character. He seems to be taking his role as the character of Tuvok very seriously. Cool piece of trivia. The bridge of the fake Delta Flyer is just a redress of the Defiant Bridge.
Computer. That program is available.
Thanks, Majel. Majel, Majel. Thanks, Majel. Majel, Majel.
All All systems functioning within normal parameters.
Thanks, Majel.
Program Crusher 4 in progress.
Majel.
His breathing rate is dropping, Doctor.
Thanks, Majel.
This must be a terrible shock.
Thanks, Majel.
The tranquilizer's wearing off.
Thanks, Majel.
I'm in love with you, Mr. Spock.
Majel.
Release!
Thanks, Majel.
Unable to comply. Holodeck controls are offline.
Majel.
People don't see your shadow, 'cause the groundhog is all you want. Hey, Phil, don't see your shadow.